Okay. So with this, I thought I'd just take a seat here, and we're going to talk about your story.
About my what?
Your story.
My story?
Your book. As if this, almost like this is the first time we've talked.
Okay.
And say I'm an interviewer. This is kind of what the scene will be. There'll be a camera, there'll be, some smiley face TV person, and they're going to say, why'd you write the book, Isabelle?
I had these stories inside of me all of my life. I heard them, I internalized them, and they were there. These were the stories I was told as I grew up. And then the rest of it in the book is my story. I know my story. My story is not as exciting as the stories before me. But it's a good punctuation for something incredible that happened.
Is it a family story? Is it a survival story? Is it all of the above?
It's all of the above. All of the above. An incredible story that I did not realize was incredible.
It's a lot of history too.
Lots of history. Only I thought it was normal. I was part of that, so it seemed normal. It was not normal, it was abnormal, it was difficult. And they were very special people. They were not like us. Maybe we would rise to that occasion. I hope we're never forced to do that.
When did you come about the realization of the hatred that people felt for your people? How you didn't understand it?
I understood it. I found out about it when I was 9 years old. I had a friend who lived across the street that came from Germany. Her name was Jeannie Raisman. And she spoke of Germany in glowing terms. That was where she had come from. She was unaware of why she left. She was a child, and her parents had spared her that. It's in the book. And she made a comment about the schools in Germany, and when I brought them home to my mother and told them to her, my mother, with great sadness, explained what was going on and told me not to say a word to Jeannie if her parents were trying to shield her from it. And that's how I learned about it. And from there on, I learned more and more and more. The Jewish community in New York was totally aware of the terrible persecution. So obviously our government was as well. But very few people were interested in helping.
Tell me about the rally. 1943, Madison Square Garden.
Oh, that rally in 1943 was called by Jewish organizations. I was a child. They took all of the schools, the Jewish schools. Kids used to go to school, Jewish school, after public school. It was after school. You learned it depending on how religious you were. We weren't religious, so we got very little religion, but we got lots of culture as a people. We understood who we were. And it didn't matter whether you were very religious or very nominal as we were. You were Jewish, and all of the Jewish children who went to school, and that's almost all of them, and New York had millions of Jews. All of those children went to Madison Square Garden. They were the rally, the future of Judaism. And we heard a lot of things, some of which we understood and some of which we did not. We all understood that people were in terrible trouble in Europe.
What do you remember about the rally?
What do I remember? It was exciting. And there were so many kids. I'd never seen so many kids in one place. And it was such a big place. And I didn't feel little, interestingly enough. I felt fine. I felt like I belonged there. My school was there and I was there. But I knew it was something special that they had called because there was trouble in Europe. And Europe was real. My family came from Europe. And I knew that there were real people there because we were real people. I didn't associate it with myself, that people would hate me. I never felt that. I didn't know that it extended to that. I was still a child. I didn't know that for the grace of God, if I were there, I'd be dead.
Tell me, let's go back a little bit to, how do you pronounce your hometown?
New York.
Vicious?
Oh, not my hometown, my mother's hometown.
Your mother's, Sarah's hometown was?
Vizhisht.
Tell me about early days of life in Vizhisht.
Okay. They were peasants, no better than that. They had a cow and they had chickens, and they were not allowed to farm because Jews were not allowed to own land. My grandmother was a businesswoman. She took the produce that the people produced there. She took it to Kiev, which was the largest city. They called it Kiev, that's how they said it in Russian. And she sold it and brought back things that the people needed. Needles, threads, buttons, manufactured things. It was really a very backward society, a friendly society. There was no anti-Semitism among the people that lived there. My grandmother had friends, and life was good that way. People cared for one another. But terrible stories were being reported from neighboring communities where strangers came in and killed Jews and killed them in horrible ways. And the Jews were aware of it, and the non-Jews were aware of it. The Gentiles were aware of it. My grandmother made her living by traveling and bringing these things back and forth. She sold their produce, and she brought back things for them to use. And the family provided its own vegetables and things like that. They could grow that around their little cottage.
Tell me about her fingers.
Her fingers.
Her first fingers.
She spoke in Yiddish. And in Yiddish, she would hold up her hands and she would say in Yiddish, I have 10 fingers. Which one is dispensable? Which one can I get rid of? That's when things got very, very rough and you said, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, she didn't have 10 children, but she meant she had a lot of children like she had a lot of fingers. And nobody was dispensable. Everybody was very, very important. I am one of her 10 fingers. Her progeny is her 10 fingers. So now her 10 fingers are in the hundreds.
Tell me about your first experiences in Cincinnati. When you first came here, what did they tell you about our fair city? Be nice.
I came to Cincinnati from New York, certainly not from high-class New York, from poor New York. But I had been around in that area, and when I saw Cincinnati's downtown, it reminded me of Newark, New Jersey's downtown. That's a very negative reminder. And I didn't think I was coming to a great big city, even though I read about the fact that they had culture and all kinds of things going on. It was not available. It was not apparent to me in what I saw. And then we started to look for a place to live. And I had a job on the western side of town. I did not know that this city was divided, that the Westerners were one type of Cincinnatian and the Easterners were another. I had no idea. I was a stranger. And I came there, and people were nice to me. I had a very good reception at my school. They'd never seen anything like me. I was 25 years old. I was young. I was pretty. I was wearing New York clothes.
Tell me about the bigotry in Cincinnati. How bad was it? Was it as bad as...
It was bad. The bigotry against blacks was horrendous. Not that New Yorkers were so big-hearted, but we'd never say it out loud like the Cincinnatians did. The N-word was easy. Everybody said it. Black people were not given any rights compared to white people. The pool at our school, which was for the children of the school, it was a school that had black children as well as white children. The pool was only for white children until the day before it closed down to be washed. One day they gave to the black children, and the white children and the black children never swam together. Prejudice was so apparent, it blew my mind away. I'd never seen it out loud like that. It was not out loud like that in New York. It was there, but not out loud. And if the N-word was used in New York in politer circles, and I was in polite circles, it was considered a very bad thing to do. I was not allowed to use it because it was an insult. and most of my friends were not allowed to use it. Here it was general. We had this big Coney Island that was a wonderful amusement park. Black people couldn't come to it. I couldn't understand it. We were in the North, I thought, but we were on the Mason-Dixon line. And a lot of Southern values were here. So I was a little New York kid that, I wasn't a kid, but I was a young woman that was plunked into the middle of this, and I'd never seen it close up. And I now saw it close up. The people who lived here, you get used to things. I did get used to it too.
How has the Jewish community helped you, embraced you?
No. No. I am not a religious Jew. I feel very strongly that I belong to the people. They have not embraced me, nor have they pushed me away. I'm a member of the community. I take as much of the religion as I want. I take as much of the cultural things as I want. I'm certainly welcome.
You shared a lot of the language in the book. Tell me about that.
Well, now the language I left behind in New York. Here, the people didn't know it as well as the recent immigrants to New York. The language of the home in Eastern Europe was Yiddish, of the Jewish home. I am fluent in Yiddish. I went to a school that taught me how to read and write it. I'm sort of archaic that way. There aren't many left. Those are the people that were annihilated by the Nazis.
And those are all the terms in the book, the Yiddish terms for a family and a person.
Yes,
yeah,
yes. Okay. And when I grew up, there were many people who spoke the language. They spoke other languages as well that I did not know. Russian, which my family spoke fluently, of course. That was the language of outside the house. Mm-hmm. Was the secret language to the children. They went into Russian when they didn't want us to understand what they were saying. Otherwise, they either spoke English or Yiddish to us. And I learned the languages side by side. I stopped learning Yiddish when I was 6 and went on learning more of English because I went to school. I was living in an English society. And of course, it was touted at home that I do well at school. That's a very Jewish value. I was never told